Joining us now is Republican Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio. He sits on the House Intelligence Committee. Thank you for being with me. We have a lot to get to. It's good to have you in person. As you know, the reporting this morning that CNN has is that Turkish authorities say that they have not just audio, but also video confirmation evidence that Khashoggi, this journalist who has 4 children who are American citizens, who was a journalist for the Washington Post, was murdered inside of the Saudi consulate. If that is the case, what should President Trump do about it?
Well, I think there's several aspects of this that are very troubling that we have to put in perspective. Even if this was a domestic incident that had occurred in Saudi Arabia, we'd still have grave concerns on the issue of human rights and what has occurred here and a responsibility. In this instance, though, it's this extraterritorial action that where this is happening in another country that is even that much more troubling. Turkey, a strong ally of ours.
A NATO ally.
A NATO ally. And one benefit that we have is that Turkey and the United States have integrated intelligence infrastructure. So we're going to be able to share information at a level.
And frankly, this is what the intelligence is telling us. So what if this is the case? We know that it would have gone up to then Mohammed bin Salman. It wouldn't happen if he didn't know about it. That's what intelligence officials are saying. If it's the case, what do you want the president to do about it?
Well, I think what you just outlined, though, is the next step. It's once we have the issue of what occurred and then we have confirmation between the Turkish and the United States intelligence community is then who is responsible and then holding them responsible.
But so what is it? Let's get into what that means, because firstly, should the U.S. completely stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia, abandon the $110 billion arms sales agreement with Saudi immediately, if there is evidence that this was carried out by the Saudi regime? It's really just yes or no.
Well, right, and I would say no, because it's not an issue of really value or cost. It's an issue of really Saudi Arabia is an ally. They're allied with us militarily.
So we should not stop arms sales.
At this point, I would say no. Saudi Arabia remains a very important ally in an area where we are working together in conjunction. Now, at the same time, though, individuals have to be held accountable. As you and I were talking earlier, you have North Korea doing this extraterritorial killing of Kim Jong-un's brother. You have Russia taking action in the UK. In each instance, we have increased sanctions, we've put pressure. We cannot allow this to become the new international norm that we're beginning to see, where people feel comfortable going into another nation.
It sounds like you agree with President Trump, who said this week, no, stopping arms sales is not the way to punish Saudi Arabia for this. He said there are other things that can be done. His concern, he said, is U.S. jobs. But at what point, Congressman...
That's not my job.
But at what point do human rights trump everything else?
Right.
At what point do you say, no, we are not going to fund, we are not going to fund your protection, and we are not going to sell you arms?
Well, right. I disagree that we should ever look at arms sales as jobs issues. Arms sales are an issue of where we look at interoperability, we look at whether or not someone works as an ally with us, whether we have joint military and international security concerns and issues that we're trying to address. That's what military sales that we look to. We know also it's not as if the United States exits in military sales, that the military sales are not going to occur. It means that it'll be that Russia, that China will fill that gap, and then also that interoperability, that cooperation will be lessened.
It's interesting. You're making the point that the president, you disagree with him, that in order to maintain U.S. jobs, continue
it's not a job issue. Should never be a job issue.
Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, just told CNBC a few minutes ago, he was asked if he still plans to attend the Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh, and he said yes. At this point, he is still going. As you know, media outlets have pulled out, CNN has pulled out, the New York Times has pulled out, companies are pulling out, Richard Branson's pulling out. Should the U.S. Treasury Secretary, given the state of affairs and given what is alleged here at the hands of Saudi Arabia, still go to that conference in Riyadh?
Well, I think he should very seriously consider whether or not he should. I think that the aspect that
would you go knowing what you know today?
Absolutely not. I think what we have to do is take a pause here and complete the assessment with our strong intelligence partner Turkey, and get to the bottom of not only what happened, but who was responsible, and then hold them responsible. We can't allow what is happening of nations feeling comfortable of going into another nation and taking these type of brazen human rights violations. And that's happening now at an increased level.
So around the world.
And it's changing what our basic human values are and our understanding is of the international community.
Given that point about basic human values and human rights, the president goes to your home state, Ohio, tonight. He holds a big rally in Cincinnati. What do you want him to say about human rights, about what America stands for, about Saudi Arabia, given all that U.S. intelligence knows now, given the fact that U.S. intercepts knew at least that Saudi officials were discussing a plan to capture this journalist. At a minimum, they knew that. So what should the president say? Because the optics here. He went to Saudi Arabia, his first foreign trip. He danced. You saw the sword dance of the president. What does he need to say to the people of Ohio about where we stand as a country on human rights tonight?
Well, you also, I mean, you have every president. Obama has even had, meetings where we were all very concerned about what the body language was between the president.
I understand that, but I'm talking about what we know today, right?
Well, and even then, we've always had concerns about human rights with respect to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So I think, though, what you want to hear from a president is the fact that that basic values of the United States are committed to freedom and to the security of those who seek freedom. What's troubling also about these extraterritorial actions that are taken to violate people's human rights, these are not terrorist actors. These are not international security actors. These are silencing voices of individuals who are in opposition and who are who are critics. That's what makes also this that much more troubling, because it's a shift that we're seeing around the world that we need to stop.
I need to wrap it up. We're out of time. I appreciate you being here. It sounds like you want to hear a strong message from the president on this tonight in your home state. Thank you. Nice to have you.
Good to see you.